Hello, and welcome to the We Are Power podcast. If this is your first time here, the We Are Power podcast is the podcast for you, your career, and your life. We release an episode every single Monday with listeners in over 60 countries worldwide, where you'll hear personal life stories, top-notch industry advice, and key leadership insight from amazing role models. As We Are Power is the umbrella brand to Northern Power Women Awards, which celebrates hundreds of female role models and advocates every year. This is where you can hear stories from all of our awards alumni and stay up to date with everything MPW Awards and We Are Power. Well, today I am joined by the amazing Ruth Hartnoll.
Hello.
Visionary, B Corper,
Thanks.
entrepreneur, superhero, multiple roles, Matchstick co-founder. Welcome to the pod.
Hello, friend. Nice to sit with you and be recorded having one of our conversations.
Well, do you know what? I feel like this is just going to be like one of our chats.
Having a chat in a pub, yeah.
Like we had, Love Lane Brewery was the last one, wasn't it? Yeah. So actually, it's not always a pub, but actually, probably is. But we're going to go on an adventure today around the trials, the tribulations, the ups, the downs, the fun, the adventures that comes with being an entrepreneur, which is quite frankly bonkers at times.
Yeah, it's the same thing. Don't do it. Yeah.
But where did it start? Yeah, there you go. Thank you. Thanks for joining us today. Where did it all start for you?
So Matchstick was originally called J&R, and it came out of someone that I used to work with approaching me and saying, I'll do sales, you do the creative bit, and we'll just start a business together. And I was like, sounds great. I hate sales. I don't want to do that at all. And then about 6 weeks into that journey, it just became really apparent. I didn't have the language for it then, but it became really apparent that we just weren't a very good match. And it's because the culture fit was wrong. But I didn't know that until I went on the journey of founding a B Corp and finding my now co-founder, Greg. Hello, Greg. Who's the one that took us on that journey and was like, it doesn't have to be this way, man. It can be fun. I was like, can it? So he sort of got us into the B Corp movement, and he was the one that made us more purpose-driven. Then we figured all that stuff out together over the last 5 or 6 years. But yeah, I literally got started because someone asked. It wasn't me being like, I'm going to go start a business. I was approached and said, I'll do that. And then 6 weeks in was like, I will do that, but not with you.
But how did you exit that relationship? Because it's easy sometimes to stay. It's easy to sort of stop still, isn't it?
Yeah.
Than make the difficult, awkward decision.
Yeah. I think, do you know what? Credit to the person I was dealing with at the time. Both of us just sort of looked at each other and said, this isn't quite right. So I was annoyed at the time, but now, like, what a small moment on quite a long and, significant journey. So credit to both of us. I think at that 6 week point, I was just like, it just isn't right, is it? And that's okay. Like, I'll go on to do a thing and you can carry on doing what you're doing. And we just sort of parted ways amicably. It's really common that isn't what happens. There's loads of people I know, particularly recently, where they start on that journey and it just doesn't work. And that's really tricky. So in that way, I was incredibly fortunate that it just happened to go that way. So thanks, previous partner.
And we've already shouted out Super Greg. But,
Super Greg.
Yeah, which is his full title.
That is in fact his official name, yeah.
How long was it then before you found what your ideal match stick?
Yeah, very good.
Sorry, I know, we're all weak.
Very good. So weirdly, I used to get drum lessons from the lovely David Kelly, another shout out there. And his drum studio is based in Elevator Studios. And Greg, my now co-founder, was literally moving out of his office. And I was sat having a pint with Dave. And Dave was like, oh, this is Greg. He's a web developer. And I was like, oh, what do you do, Greg? And we sat down and had a chat for 30 minutes. And thus history was made. So he started out as a freelancer and sort of co-creator. And after about, and that was like 18 months into the journey. So it was about a year I was doing it on my own, really. But then, slowly, like, Greg became part of it, became a director, and we're now where we are today. It literally wouldn't look the way it would look without him. And he's also the very definition of an incredible ally and male feminist. He is, in my opinion, one of the greatest feminists I know. So, credit to Greg. We do all the B Corp stuff and all that.
And that is so important. Like, advocacy for gender equality is critical. It's not a woman's problem to solve, right?
No, not at all. No, and Greg is, anyone who's met him will know he is one of the best people for being in that conversation. So yeah, a much better fit for me as a co-founder.
And did you always feel like you were purpose-led?
I think when I very first, and the reason why Greg sort of vaguely knew who I was pre-meeting, when I first started J&R, as we were called, I went on a thing about trying to work with female founders. So I was very much like, I want to work with other female founder businesses. I want to support you if you're a woman in business. So I had like the kernel of an idea of being like, support a group that is perhaps slightly under-supported. But then Greg sort of expanded that thinking and was like, yes, absolutely, that problem, but also all these other things that you might not have considered. And I was like, oh, that's really interesting. We can expand that thinking and make it to do with inequality rather than to do with sexism specifically. And by opening that up, it took us on the journey to B Corp and thinking about how to be purpose-led. So, yeah.
And tell us about that, because that is, B Corp is congratulations.
Thanks, yeah.
But it's not mission easy, is it?
No, it is not. And, you know, Greg is now also part of, he's a co-chair of the B Local group. So if you're someone who's in the Liverpool City region in particular and you want to get involved in B Corp or considering it, talk to that group of people. But yeah, like it's tricky. We're just about to recertify. So we certified in 2022. We need to recertify this year. It will look very different from when we first did it. I probably, to be totally honest with you, I probably wouldn't recommend it for micro businesses. Our business has changed shape and form over the years. We're now a team of 2 at the moment with a really excellent network of freelancers. So for me, I probably wouldn't go through that process now. But at the time we did it, it was absolutely the right thing to do. And we will recertify because it's so valuable to us.
And you talk about those challenges about sort of growing a business and now you've changed shape. What have you learned most about that? Because change is great because it can come about and bring great opportunities, but it also can come with pain, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think particularly in relation to the size of the company, it's really personally quite a difficult thing to resolve in your head because we're fed a completely inaccurate picture of running a business where things very linearly go up and up and up. And if it doesn't follow that trajectory, you have failed. And it's just not true, first of all, because often what happens is you go up, you hit a massive pitfall, you go up slightly a bit more, you hit another pitfall, then you go up a little bit more and a bit more. And sometimes you will have a couple of years rising. It's really likely you'll have 2 or 3 years where you fall quite a bit. So I suppose one of the main messages I would say is if that happens, you haven't failed. And there's so many things working against us at the moment. It is really unstable, uncertain times. And there's also a mindset I find particularly on places like LinkedIn where it's like, just try harder. And it's like, no, that's inaccurate. It's so inaccurate to say working harder and using that old capitalist model of thinking will result in you having more turnover, having more profit, and you having more staff members. It simply isn't the case anymore. And I always have a bit of a rallying cry when I'm in conversations like this to say, it's not just you. There are so many things working against you and lean into that. So I think for me, the biggest lesson over the last 5 or 6 years it has been now, it is not always an upward trajectory. It is often a mix of down and up, and that is valid and good too.
And I think it's the learning, isn't it? It's the learning from both, isn't it? You learn from the wins and celebrate those wins.
Yeah.
And so within amongst those challenges, what have been those big wins for you?
So there's been lots of big wins. Every single person we hired was wonderful. Like, huge credit to anyone who's ever worked in Matchstick. I didn't really understand what good culture meant until I had to go through the process of being like, who do I want to work with? And also, how do we create a space that people want to work in? So any Matchstick we've hired, if you're listening, you're wonderful. And we're deeply honoured to have had you as part of our team. The other big wins, finding Greg, it absolutely changed the trajectory of what we were doing. So yeah, definitely that. I think as well, going through the B Corp process and then having to embed that framework into everything we did, it's now led to the most recent iteration of the business that we were working on last year and are sort of relaunching this year in February with our rebrand. It's not just about, originally we were very much a marketing and comms agency. We're now also doing stuff like business transformation, talking to people about how they make more equitable working spaces. That's because of B Corp and living with that thinking for 2 or 3 years. So big wins, definitely B Corp, trying to do more purpose-led stuff, just being a bit of a pain in the ass, sat in the room, just being in rooms where no one's talking about the fact that those old structures don't work and those old systems don't serve a lot of people. So just being that person and being vocal and having the huge opportunity and fortune to do that. Being part of the boards, I know we'll come on to talk about some of the positions I've got outside of Matchstick. Those are massive opportunities and massive highs. And also just like all of the work we've produced. I think one of the things I like by nature, I'm a copywriter. The trade that I learned was I learned to write and then I applied it to a commercial setting. So anytime I got to sit down and write a case study, I get like PTSD because it's all I had to do for other people. And I'm like, God, I don't want to write another case study. I've written hundreds of them. But anytime I do it for us, it's basically like saying, look at all the hard work you did. So that's always a nice moment too, to be like, shit, we did that. That's cool.
Yeah, high five.
High five.
Yeah. And you talked, I just want to sort of talk about the culture.
Yeah.
Because there's so much talk. We've talked about the love of LinkedIn.
Yes.
But, there's so much, lots of ChatGPT orientated stuff.
Yeah.
And actually we'll get onto that. How does that sit with a copywriter specialist? But culture, is it harder or easier, do you think, to build that culture within a micro as it is within some of those big multinationals?
I think you're looking at two slightly different challenges or multiple different challenges there, depending on the size of the team. We've had the biggest we've ever been was like 12 people who were a mix of full-time and part-time. I personally feel, and you can, the staff would be the best testament to this, but they're not here with us, hopefully. I feel like we got the culture pretty right there, and there was loads of stuff we made as decisions I was really proud of. However, shrinking to a team of just the two of us now with a group of freelancers, loads of the thinking that we embedded and thought about when we were size of 12, 5, 10 people, because it fluctuates quite a lot, it's still present now. Even the way that, like, if Greg's having a bad day, if I'm having a bad day, or if one of us is sick, or if one of us is getting married, like, how do we handle that? It is part of the culture we embedded 4 years ago when we had team members. So I think as a micro business, if you go through those like levels of fluctuation, whatever you started with, the root of that, genuinely loads of those values, loads of that thinking still transposes when there's just two of you. It also transposes to how you deal with your freelancers. Freelancers are treated terribly. We try to treat them as fairly as we can, as much as our cash flow will allow it. I'm sorry to every freelancer we've paid late. That's totally the cash flow's fault. But yeah, like anytime we're dealing with people as well, we just say, if I was a freelancer, how would I want to be treated? So definitely that. If you're dealing with a larger organisation, honestly, I don't think I've got the experience to talk about that, because the biggest organisation I've ever worked for was like 35 people. So I've always been in SMEs. So the cultures that I've seen in larger organisations, I find that pockets of it do it really well. And that's usually a reflection of like a little microcosm of the business and some of the values we've seen. Really, it's down to the people and how much they care about it. But across the organisation, I think much harder to achieve if you're a bigger organisation, for sure. Yeah.
Without it being a tick box.
Yeah, without it being like HR have told us to do this. Yeah, really tricky to achieve. That's hard work. I've never had to do that, so I wouldn't know. And
just moving into your side hustles, if you like. So 18 months ago, something like that now, you were appointed, weren't you, as the co-chair of...
So, the deputy chair of the Business and Enterprise Board for Liverpool City Region. It's a bit of a...
It's a big organisation, right? Big area to cover.
Yeah, the Combined Authority. So if anyone who's listening and doesn't really know what the Combined Authority is, they're effectively the very large group of people that look after Liverpool City Region, and it's Steve Rotherham and Catherine who are the leaders of that organisation. So they're the people we deal with most in those positions. I do it with my very brilliant chair, David Meyerowitz, as a partner on that. Just an incredible opportunity. That board position has led me to be in a room full of very interesting, cool people who are working very hard to do good things across our city region. It's got me to the Houses of Parliament to talk about net zero. Like, loads of amazing stuff's come out of that you can't predict unless you give yourself that opportunity. And like, incredibly easy for someone like me who's only like 35 to be like, why on earth am I deputy chair of a region's business board? That's entirely the reason why I am, because they had a very clear mission when they reorganised all those boards to do very differently to what they'd done before. And me and David were that criteria, so we got the jobs. So if anyone is listening or watching and is like, I couldn't be the chair of a board or whatever, yeah, you can. And you're way more qualified than you think you are. Particularly if you've kind of got nothing to lose. I find when I'm in those board meetings, I'm a bit like, well, I'm a deputy chair. It kind of gives you like immunity, just to be a bit like, they weren't finished talking, be quiet. Like you can be a bit like, no, stop. So yeah, I think it also empowers you to be a slightly more confident version of yourself, which is lovely.
And you talked earlier about using your voice in the room.
Yeah.
And people want to do that, but sometimes fearful of going, God, what if I say the wrong thing? Mm-hmm. Or actually, I don't know enough to input here, so I'll just be an observer of wire. What would you say?
I would say frame your response as curiosity is quite a good hack. So I was in a meeting yesterday, for example, where we were talking about branding for something, and I said they presented something to us, and I was like, that's really interesting. Coming from a place of curiosity, how did you arrive at that insight? So rather than say like, why on earth have you made that decision, which is the unfair, cruel thing, particularly if you're someone that's been involved in branding projects, so much conversation has gone on to get to that point that you need to be kind and empathetic to the people who've gone on that journey. So I was a bit like, coming from a place of curiosity, where was that insight from? That's really interesting. And then it opens it up so people don't feel attacked. I think that's quite useful, particularly if you're not feeling massively confident. Just say it like feigning ignorance. You can be like, so I don't know this thing. That'd be really interesting if you could explain that to me. I'm curious to hear what you've got to say. Like, approach it with enthusiasm and a bit of curiosity, and you will never look stupid. And if someone makes you feel stupid, that's with them. So it's not with you.
Mental note right here, right now. That is the best top tip.
Yeah.
And you're also on the board, a part of the Lifted.
The Lifted project, yes, the incredible Lifted project that's founded by many brilliant women, particularly Sandra.
Sandra Moore MBE.
Sandra Moore MBE.
High five
recently this year. Well done, Miss Moore. Yes, amazing news. Another really interesting project where they're trying to get more investment for female founders at lots of different regional clusters. I'm involved in the Liverpool City region one. I suppose, again, going back to the point about feeling qualified or underqualified, I know nothing about investment, can't stress this enough. Like, it's something that my type of business probably isn't very well suited for. So I sort of approached that board position with a bit of curiosity, again, being like, I don't know anything about it. Wouldn't it be the great way to learn about it is to be on a board with a load of people that do? So I just sort of put myself in the room and was like, it would be really interesting to learn about this. So I did. So again, like, even if you're applying for a board, you're like, I've got no direct experience of that. It doesn't matter. You can still add something. So just go for it.
And what outside of all of this, I'm not really a big fan of the whole, how do you have it all and work-life balance, because I think everything just gets very blurred. You talked about, getting married this year.
Yes,
congratulations.
I am. Thank you.
April, not too far away now.
Yes, it's very near.
Very exciting. You've also mentioned drums. I literally scribbled that down right at the start of our conversation. Not that your wedding is an outside hobby, but what is going on in your outside of Matchstick, outside of your board roles?
Yeah.
Are you still playing drums? Are you planning a wedding?
Yeah. Sadly, I don't play drums enough anymore. Sorry, Dave. You were such a good teacher. No, I'm not playing enough drums at all. I suppose outside of work, I think the reason why last year in particular, 2022 and 2023, as Greg will attest, were very hard years. They were not easy to run a business in. I think a lot of people struggled. We sort of really, really felt the impact of COVID 2 years after it happened for our type of business. So it was, everyone's budget shrunk. It was really hard. We had the biggest team we ever had and less income. So there was a lot of difficult stuff going on then. 2024, I think at the beginning of it, we just sort of both looked at each other and said, this is the year we're just going to have to look after ourselves. And in the entire time of running the business, we've never said that. We always said, how do we look after the team? What do we do for them? We kind of needed to, partly because we were both very burnt out, but also because we had no other option. The option was look after ourselves or have nothing to look after. So we did, basically. And in doing that and allowing ourselves that breathing room, all the stuff in the personal life flourished, because it meant when I was finishing work, I was really finishing work. When I was thinking about, I don't know if anyone's ever planned a wedding who's listening to this. I saw it as like the ultimate creative live event brief. It was just like, it was so fun to think about. I feel like our colleague in the background is going to agree with that. Yeah.
Faye, our events manager.
Faye in the background is going to be like, yes, that sounds fun. It absolutely is. And I think as someone that puts events on with Firestarters, which is the other thing we do outside of Matchstick, it was just really fun to think about. Like, what a cool thing to think about. How can I entertain all the people I love for a day? Like, great brief. So I think for me, that made all of that stuff way easier. We also cheated and used the project management tool we have at Matchstick to make planning the wedding easier. Hot tip, use Asana for planning a wedding.
There's always side hacks and everything there, isn't there? and I think another real powerful tool is other humans.
Yeah.
And I think the thing that I know about you, Ruth, is you're always very, very generous with giving your time and your ear to other people.
Yeah.
And to listen and to take action and to do. And it's a couple of years ago now that you formed our female founders WhatsApp group in Liverpool, and it started in a fantastic, lovely lunch at Murray.
Yeah.
And we convene in big numbers, small numbers, individual numbers, but it's the power of that community and tribe, particularly around female founders. I know we all have a million WhatsApp groups, families, business, etc. But it is important, isn't it? That ability to be able to give and gain.
Yeah, absolutely. And to massively credit Chelsea Slater here, who founded Innovate Her, it was 100% Chelsea's idea when we did that very first meal a couple of years ago. She was like, we know loads of women in business who are struggling. Should we just organise a meal? I was like, great idea. So we did it together. And then very organically, it became the Female Founders Group, a part of and welcome other people to now. That's such an interesting side entity to me, because you can't emulate what that group does organically together. And even the way we speak to each other in that WhatsApp group, like the last time we met up at Love Lane, a friend of mine, Christine, was there and she joined us temporarily, then had to go home. And she sent me a message afterwards and was like, I just can't get over how lovely and kind you all were to each other and how candidly you spoke together. And I was like, it makes me really sad you don't have that group, because we should all have that group. So we need to welcome her. But also, find your tribe is such an important message. But I personally have found you often find that tribe by making it yourself. I'm very much a, if you want it done, do it yourself person. So we're very, very lucky to be part of that group of people. It's such an interesting group of people, isn't it? So that is a good group, good support group.
It is so good, and I'm really gutted actually, because we talked about vision boarding at the last get up, and I can't be at it. And I'm like, I'll host it. You can do it in the office, and then I'm down in their London town. But it's all about female founders in London, so it's all good. That is my get out of jail card. But there is that sense, and it's that safe place, isn't it?
Yeah.
And it's I'm being, I think it is that candid approach. What would you say your superpower is?
I think my superpower is being the glue. And I think there are a lot of women who have to fulfill this role. Christina, who has been on the podcast very recently, in fact, and is also part of our Female Founders Group, she sort of said to me, it's so nice not to have to be the glue for once. And I was like, isn't it lovely when someone else says, what are we doing? When are we doing it? We're doing it here. I've organised it. Here's the invite. I often fulfill that role. I do it willingly because I have the capacity to do it. I'm child-free by design, so it is much easier for me to give my time to those things than it is with someone with caring responsibilities. So I'm a bit like, if I want to do it, I'll do it. And if I don't, I just won't. So anytime that I'm putting my time into getting people together, it's because I want to. So glue, stickiness is
glue and stickiness. Yeah. And we mentioned it, so I just want to come back to it very quickly. You started life as, not life in it, out of the womb, but as a copywriter. I don't know, maybe you did, who knows?
I was writing as I came out, yeah.
Indeed. The talent, you've always been talented. ChatGPT, where does that fit into your world and ethos and value system?
So I actually think it's a really interesting tool for copywriters, not because it should replace the thing you're doing, but often, and particularly the way marketing budgets are going, everyone's teams are shrinking. Either you're not in a team at all, it's very common to be the only marketer having to do a lot of things, or particularly if you're a copywriter, it's really likely you're the only writer in that company. I see it as a sparring partner. So if you're trying to come up with, we do a lot of like brand voice work at Matchstick. So we'll do brand identity work, and then it's my job to figure out a company's values and personality. ChatGPT is a really good sparring partner if you haven't got anyone sat opposite you, which is often the case because we do most of our work remote now at Matchstick. So I think for me, I use it as like, if not that, this, then that. So you ask it questions and it will be like this nonsensical thing. But because it said a nonsensical thing, it pushes your head into a different space, which gives you the answer you need. So I see it as like a brainstorming tool rather than a replacement tool. I don't know how other people use it.
It's how you coach it, I suppose, and guide and train it.
Yeah, absolutely. So I find it useful. Yeah.
And we talked about the wedding. There may or may not be sort of back to drums at some point down the line. There'll be a vision boarding. But you've got the rebrand coming up very, very soon as well. Exciting. What are you most looking forward to? We've said it's challenging times.
Yeah. I think the rebrand, who was created by the absolutely incredible I Am Female studio based out of London, they did our rebrand for us. That is such a big moment. We've done effectively over the course of 5 or 6 years, we've done the first iteration, which was J&R. We did the rebrand that became Matchstick, and then we've got this most recent version of us. because we do so much brand work, we've obviously got really high standards for it and we know the process very intimately. So I think for me, I'm incredibly excited with what's possible with us doing that and who it introduces us to. So I'm really looking forward to it. It's also really soon, so it's very front of mind for me. So the rebrand is a huge thing. I'm really looking forward to that. And it also means we can sort of properly articulate ourselves in a way we haven't done before. So also even from a copywriting point of view, quite a fun thing to think about, to be honest. So yeah, definitely that. And also just the renewed energy we have after giving ourselves a year to recuperate and hide away and not be massively present, because we spent 5 years being really visible and doing everything we possibly could. Having a retreating year was actually amazing. It was lovely. Highly recommend hobbiting for a whole year. And this year we're back at it, back visible again. So you'll see that from February going on.
And you've been so honest today. You're always very honest, always very candid, and you enable that, I think, in others and in the group and the tribe. So for anyone watching or listening who wants to or is considering following in the footsteps of being an entrepreneur or forming a partnership with someone, what advice would you pass on to them? Because you've been brilliant at hacks today.
Thanks. So at the beginning I said don't do it. I'd probably like to revise that answer slightly. I would say I think the point at which I was doing it, I was blinded by confidence and optimism. And I think that is pretty critical if you want to start a business. Try not to think too practically at the beginning, which sounds like a mad thing to say. You're forced to think that way as soon as you take on other people and you're responsible for their responsibilities. So at the beginning, if you're considering running a business, my God, just go head and heart first and get on with shit. If I look back at the amount of stuff we achieved in the first 2 years of Matchstick, it's staggering. I couldn't do it now. I haven't got the energy for it because all my energy got taken in those first 5 years of the business. So I think as soon as you've got the energy, get on with it and start doing it and get other people energized by how much you care about it. So just throw everything at it if you're thinking about it. And equally, stay as small as you can for as long as you can would be quite practical advice I have for right now. In the current climate, really do as much as you can with a very small group of trusted people. And as much as you can, try not to give yourself more work than you have to. So, which, Simone, you're terrible at. So, just as a note for everyone listening, Simone always does too much. Definitely give yourself a manageable amount, but just go at it. Really, really throw yourself into it. Because if you're not at that level of energy for your own business, you'll never make it. It's that clear to me. Because if I didn't have that energy at the beginning, we just wouldn't be where we are now at a much calmer stage. But I needed all that energy at the beginning to get to the calm stage. So,
and finally, I think I've said finally 3 times, but it's okay. The hobbying year. What was your highlight of that hobbying year?
So definitely planning the wedding. That's been absolutely amazing. Shout out to
do you mean the live event?
Yes, the live creative collaboration I've done with my future husband, Joseph Wilding. Yeah, no, that's been really nice to plan. And we came up with branding for it and everything. We're so weird. So it's been such a fun thing to do. So that's been incredible. I think also just having the opportunity, over the summer, for example, it becomes incredibly quiet at agencies. So we just said, why don't we just do a 4-day week for the summer? That was a really smart move. So we worked really quite hard for those 4 days, but we had so much breathing room and we also didn't have to take that much holiday, which meant we could still be available to people. So really building in routines around rest and then having a big thing to look forward to. That was the stuff that was really enjoyable last year.
Ruth, thank you. I wish you so much love for the wedding.
Thank you.
Sorry I can't be with you.
Oh, that's quite okay.
I know. I'm gutted. But no, thank you so much. Really looking forward to seeing the outputs of the vision board as well.
Yes.
High five to Greg. High five to all of our female founders. Yeah. Thank you so much for joining us today on the We Are Power podcast.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Subscribe on YouTube, Apple, Amazon Music, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Leave us a review or follow us on socials. We are power_net on Insta, TikTok and Twitter. Or We Are Power on LinkedIn, Facebook. And We Are _power on YouTube.